Don't forget, ko-fi.com/stopwritingalone is a real simple way to show your support for what's going on here week after week. Hi everyone, this is Nicole Rivera and you're listening to the Stop Writing Alone podcast for writers who are looking for their writing community. I know you want to find readers for your work, but I think your first step is to connect with other writers. That's what we're going to do here in the Stop Writing Alone podcast. We'll do writing prompts and other writing group activities, discover online writing communities, learn how to find local writing groups, or how to make your own. Join us as we explore, learn, and write. Hi, this is Nicole Rivera, and you're listening to the Stop Writing Alone podcast. I've been listening to Amy Tan's Masterclass through the Masterclass app, and she had this one lesson that was lesson number 8 is entitled Choosing the Right Words. And I just love this lesson because she talks about two different topics, probably more, but two that kind of stuck with me. And one was her love of words and choosing words that can do the extra work for you, that their rhythm and sound actually echo their meaning. And then she also got into the lesson of the words that we shouldn't use and trying to stay away from things that are overused, too common, very cliche. And the really interesting thing about me listening to this masterclass and sort of absorbing these lessons and just, I'm just geeking out on it hard, is that I also received the most recent issue of the Writer magazine. And there's an entire article in there about how we need to beware of the cliche and stereotypes and what we are, how we are introducing our characters and themes into our books with these choices that we make. And there was also a column on code switching and code meshing. And all of these things from Amy Tan's lesson to these articles to an incident that I had on Instagram have had me all thinking about how important the words are that we choose and how powerful the words are that we choose. And I think it's so appropriate to have this conversation and to be thinking about this during April, during National Poetry Month, because no one knows, like the poets, how incredibly powerful a single word can be and how game-changing these choices are. So I loved all these different lessons that I've been receiving, so I wanted to share a couple with you. So I want to begin with Amy Tan speaking in Lesson 8 of her masterclass, Choosing the Right Words.
In a story, you can capture a single moment with a set of circumstances, and it works for that moment. It's ephemeral, and then it's gone, but you have come to an understanding through this careful construction of words. Every word relates to the next word, and you should think of that in terms of companions in what you're trying to express, especially the textures of the words. Every word has a relationship in terms of its rhythm to the next one. Every sentence has rhythm, and the sentence that it adjoins, and the paragraph, and the new paragraph. Think about the sound of the words, for example.
I love this bit that she's about to get into. Never mind. I mean, already everything that she's talking about is like speaking to my soul. These rhythms that we hear and the patterns of the words and then the patterns into the sentences and so forth. But this bit about the sounds of the words just takes it to the next level. So listen.
It's really interesting to me that certain words in English that have to do with a texture of light or a surface begin with the letters GL. For example, glisten, glimmer, glow. Think about those.
So I was half listening, as I do, when this lesson was playing, and I heard the beginning and about all the words that have to do with exuding light, and then I heard the word glow, and I did not hear the other word, so I did not hear her bit about the GL, which is fascinating because I heard it on the re-listen, but I heard glow. And I started to think about all of the words with this O sound, like glow and whoa and show and grow. And I mean, I can go on and on, but it's almost that all of these words have this expandability in them. And it just planted the seed in my head of like, whoa. I mean, here I am saying whoa. But to really have a moment to sit and play with words. She actually says earlier on in this lesson, and I don't want to, take away from Masterclass and play the whole thing, but she said that when she was a child, one of her playthings was to sit with a thesaurus and just like go through the words and say how all of these different words all meant or could mean the same thing. But then in the same instant, how every single one of them has its own particular meaning and which one is the precise one for the moment. So I don't know. It's one of those things. Sometimes I hear something on a podcast or I read something in, an article, and it sort of sticks with me and becomes like a new sort of obsession. And I feel like this close examination of words, which is, it's not a new idea. And it's not that it's necessarily new to me, but it's kind of like listening to this has reinvigorated this passion of mine to really think carefully and closely about the words that I choose, particularly when writing short stories, flash fiction, of course, as I said before, poetry. But this doesn't mean that I shouldn't take the same time to do things in longer works. And I'm really thinking I need to get myself a print thesaurus. I don't think I used to have one, and I don't know. Must have lost it in the flood. I lost so many books in my flood. But I've been relying on Google searches and going to Webster's.com or what have you. But I would think I would like to have a print thesaurus on hand again just to play with these words. A second thought obsession of mine triggered this week from the Writers Magazine comes from a column by Yi-Shun Lai in the May 2021 issue of The Writer, and it's the entitled Code Meshing 101. And I think many people are familiar with the idea of code switching, but if you are not familiar with code meshing, Lai defines it as the merging of the non-dominant cultures or vernacular into standard English. And she realized in her youth, being exposed to so many people with in the Jewish culture, although that wasn't her own culture, she started using Yiddish in her own language because it was just part of her day to day, right? And as a New Yorker, this is something that was also very common to me. I had an aunt who was Jewish. I had people in my family who were Hispanic, and I've had, of course, My own family was Italian, and so while I was code switching from time to time, what I really ended up doing was this code meshing of taking words from one culture and words from another culture and words from a third culture. And it just was all a part of my vernacular, that as I spoke, we would just trickle in all different words. And as a child, I didn't know where one came from or another. It wasn't until adulthood that I realized, like, whoa, I'm speaking like I'm throwing around words from 3 or 4 different languages. And I wanted to point this out and just discuss this because it as Lai mentions in this particular column, this is incredibly important for our writing, that we capture this type of speech pattern, because it is so common in the United States that depending on where you are and who you're exposed to, this is how most people speak, because we are such a melting pot of cultures. So she gave for, as an example, I'll just read an excerpt here. She said, take, for instance, one recurring word in Sylvester's Running, a YA novel about a Cuban girl whose father is running for president. That word is papi. And it's what she calls her father, not dad, not pops, not father, papi. Her mother is mommy, and throughout the work, she and her parents and her friends drop in bits of Spanish. Entro y salgo, says a friend, by a way of telling Mariana, our heroine, that she'll be right back. Porque nos, asks papi, when Mariana pushes back in a typical teenage fashion. And she goes on to explain how we can do this, without having to redefine everything and always giving our readers a definition for, what does that mean? And one perfect example is ¿por qué no? And if you don't know what it means, and a reader doesn't know what it means, you could simply have somebody answer in English, because papi, so that you would understand that the implication of por qué no is why not. So, of course, you wouldn't do code switching and code meshing in cultures or languages that you're not familiar with, but don't forget the ones that you are, and don't forget to dribble it into your writing. It's so important. And there was one bit here that Lai says. She says, in fact, if you're reading a contemporary work in which there is no code meshing, not a single character who speaks non-standard English, I'd suggest that you're reading work set in a world that doesn't really exist anymore. Code mesh works allow the reader to access worlds they may not be a part of immediately. So, and I've often felt this way, but I wasn't sure if it was a unique experience for me, particularly, like I said, living here in New York City, teaching in the school that I taught in, which was an incredibly diverse population. I said, maybe it's not like that everywhere. But for me, my entire life experience here has been filled with this code meshing and really just picking up things from so many different cultures, and just hearing whether it's friends, family, students, coworkers, just speaking in this way so fluidly and fluently, and you're just sort of expected to keep up and pick up what's going on. So I loved this column, this article speaking about this. So I would definitely recommend getting this issue, because at the end of the article, she does give, tips on how to make sure that you do this in a way that is respectful of the culture and also clear for the reader. And it's, it's a short 2-page article, but it's so thorough And I think it's a really great topic to explore and think about when working on your writing. And both of those lessons are about things that, we want to think about putting into our writing. But the other big lesson obsession of the week are the things to avoid when we're writing. So I'm going to give you Amy Tam one more time. Hold on.
The other thing to avoid is common expressions, cliches. Things like, he looked white as a ghost. These things, they're typical and you can use them, but if you use too many of them, your language is not fresh. Is there a way that you can say that? Well, white as a ghost. What you're talking about is somebody who is afraid. Somebody who probably has had something in the way of body visceral reactions. And it's probably true that when you're really scared or you're sick, your complexion changes. What else changes? Or what is it that they're doing that exemplifies that same thing? So flag those things that are just too much in use by everybody.
So what I love about this advice is how Amy Tan is, making us really examine. Like when you do your first draft, you write, sure, he's as white as a ghost. It's going to come out. You let it happen. But in revision, you kind of like highlight and you look for, you put the goggles on. I'm on a cliche search. I'm going to find them and I'm going to ask myself, okay, white as a ghost. What did I mean? The fear. What do I want to express? How else can I say this? And the way I started thinking about it, I was talking to the Happy Campers about this week. I was like, it's our job as writers to create the next cliche. You want to create the other thing that people will say when it comes to fear. Somebody came up with that phrase. He was as white as a ghost. And it was so deeply true to people. People so clearly understood what it meant that they used it over and over and over again. It's not the only thing that expresses fear. So we just have to, use that as a kind of like a placeholder, come back to it, rewrite it, and find your way to like the next cliche. That's kind of how I've been thinking about it. And then to extend that point, back in that Writer magazine, there was an article entitled Walking Cliche, and it's pro tips for avoiding cliched characters in fiction. And so they go on not just talking about the phrases, but then talking about how do you make sure that you're not creating cliched characters. And of course, they talked about this idea of, the cookie cutter, really, really good guy, or the supervillain that's got no other redeeming characteristics. And they said, typically we create these characters in the sort of like the void of our story. They are created simply to serve the story, and that's why they are so one-dimensional. So I love this one bit of advice that they said, if you think you may have a character that is feeling very cliched or not very deep, take them out of your story. Take that character and bring them outside the story and let them run through various scenarios. And I remember many of the mentors in Pitch Wars having the other mentees do this with their characters. They had them doing all these other things. And I was like, my goodness, they're spending so much time writing outside of their story. And I really could not understand the purpose of it. But this makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, I've always loved doing role play with different characters to sort of get to know them better. But I love it to also think of it in the future now as a tool if a character seems simply stuck and unable to grow beyond, whatever parameters the story has set up. So that was an article that started on page 16 in the May 2021 issue of the Writer magazine. And I feel like this has been like one big long commercial for Masterclass and the Writer magazine. And I apologize if it feels that way to you, but this is where my head's at. These are the things that I've been engrossed in. And I have been getting so much out of both of them this week. So I wanted to share that with you, and let you know that that's out there, because it is. And and I just hate being the only one with the cool new thing in the room. But yeah, I that was my thinking this week, all about the words we choose. And I've been doing revisions. I pulled out my first ever novel that I wrote in NaNoWriMo, probably 2011. I found the old file and dragged it out, and I'm diving in, guys. So I know that these lessons of mine are so timely, because when you talk about the first thing you ever wrote, of course, there are going to be cliches everywhere, likely be many cliched characters. And I'm just going to have a wonderful opportunity to just amp up words and really go in and play with the language that's there and find the more perfect words to make the book come alive. So I'm excited to be playing around with that project and have all of these lessons at my fingertips while I do so. So I hope you enjoyed this. And if you have any questions about any of this stuff, and or where to get this stuff, I can put a link to Masterclass in the show notes, and a link for Writer magazine. I will say this: I got an incredible deal for the Writer magazine through Groupon. I don't know if they're still doing that, and that's how I got my subscription. So yeah, I guess I'll check to see if that's there before I put the link. If it's there, I'll put the Groupon link if I can find it. Otherwise, I'll just give you a link to Writer magazine, and that is all. And this week, over on the YouTube channel, will be, is this Creative Nonfiction Week? No, this is the Writing Exercise Week. That's correct. So head on over to NV Rivera on YouTube on Friday. You can head on over to @StopWritingAlone on Instagram on Friday for a photo prompt. Every single Friday there's a photo prompt Friday. And this Sunday, you can go over to the Instagram stories for a collection of all the submission calls that I find throughout the week on Instagram that was formerly called #SubmitSunday. But I discovered last week in a huge lesson on word choice that hashtag ain't gonna work no more. If you follow the Instagram account, you likely saw the story that #SubmitSunday means something entirely else and not writing related. And I discovered that very early on Sunday morning. So I will be changing the hashtag. I haven't settled on it yet. But if you head over to @StopWritingAlone and you look at the stories on Sunday, you will see current submission calls. And I don't limit it to just fiction, because while that is what I am seeking, that doesn't mean that other writers are not seeking other things like creative nonfiction, essays, and poetry. And I've even gotten screenwriting from time to time. I'm stumbling across all these things, so I'm sharing whatever it is I find. If it's current and they're looking for writing now, I just want to share it with you guys. So head on over there and you can see that. But otherwise, that is it for now. That is it for all the goings on. Oh no, one more thing. If you are on the Clubhouse app, please remember that every single Saturday, myself and the ladies that are in my mini mastermind group, Stop Dreaming Alone, we have a chat every single Saturday afternoon, which is 2:30 p.m. Eastern. And I can do the math for you. It's 11:30 a.m. Pacific and 7:30 p.m. GMT. So yeah, please come on over. If you find me on Clubhouse at NV Rivera, or you can even just search the Stop Dreaming Alone Clubhouse. But you know what? I'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. Okay, that's truly it. This has gone on far longer than I imagined. It was wonderful chatting with you again. Have a lovely week. Happy writing. I will talk to you next Thursday. Psst, are you still here? So I was about to put together my show notes, and I went over to Masterclass to get the link, and it appears that I have 3 guest passes that are going to expire on April 12th. A guest pass gives you 7 days access to Masterclass, so it's not like forever, but it's definitely enough time to watch the Amy Tan class and more. I mean, honestly, if you dedicated yourself, 7 days is a good chunk of time. So, yes, I'm trying to think of how to do this. DM me either on Facebook or at Stop Writing Alone on Instagram if you are interested. And the first 3 people that say, I want that Masterclass Pass, you'll get it as long as it's before April 12th, 2021. Before you go, don't forget to subscribe to the Stop Writing Alone podcast wherever you're listening to this episode today. Then connect with us on Facebook at Stop Writing Alone Facebook page or in the Stop Writing Alone with Nicole Rivera Facebook group. Check Instagram or Twitter where I'm at NV_Rivera to find links to our email newsletter. Recording, hosting, editing, producing. It's so much work. Disaster has struck. I finished my coffee. Tell me coffee is coming. ko-fi.com/stop writing alone.